Welcome to Pause for Peace with me, Pastor Jule, and thank you for taking some time amid all that has gone on in these last couple of weeks to catch up with Pause for Peace. We have had to delay a little bit because of the horrible snowstorm that took place here in Middle Tennessee that was followed by a tremendous amount of ice glazing over everything. If you're not somebody that has lived through this, you do not realize that a quarter to an inch of ice on even something as seemingly delicate and pliable as an electrical line can snap it right in two. Here we are in Middle Tennessee. We have the destruction still around us. There are trees and limbs and folks who have done at least a little work to be able to gather up all that has come down from the trees and find people who have chainsaws and can clean up the mess of trees that have literally we have trees that have split in half, trees that have come down entirely and just uprooted, all the roots as well, not just the tree itself. So it has truly been a very traumatizing time here in Middle Tennessee, not just for the land, but for those who've been seeking to live through this cold snap for Middle Tennessee. It is not common for us to get down to 0 degree Fahrenheit when the electricity is out as well. It's been really tough. If you've lived through it. And I hope you are doing what you can to get yourself back centered. You might have to do shaking. Shaking is a good thing to literally shake it all off because there's trauma all around us. And if you are somebody who lived through the 10, 11, 12 days with no electricity, you entirely are carrying all of that in your body. So some way to be able, in Healing Touch, we literally are able to brush it off, energetically release. And if you need a practitioner, do what you have to do to get yourself back centered and free of all that we have experienced. In the middle of all this, February has rolled around, and February 1st is the amazing day that is the pause to celebrate the wonderful patron saint of Ireland, Saint Brigid. Now, I understand that there's this myth and lore around, did Saint Brigid herself really live? Saint Brigid of Kildare, was she really this abbess at Kildare? Did she really her and her followers tend this flame that had been a perpetual fire there for a very long time, possibly first by the Druids and then by Saint Brigid and her sisters that continuously kept that flame of Kildare. There's lore around her. We don't even know if Brigid really was her name because it's possible that this woman who was this leader in this community who had so many attributes of the goddess Brigid and kind of got morphed into those energies of the goddess Brigid, this Celtic wonderful goddess who was honored as somebody all about new life and the birthing process and the flame and the tending of the fire that is in all things. Some of us call that life force. Some of us call it Holy Spirit. Some of us don't know what to call it, but that which animates us, this fire, this light within. And so this woman who's named as Brigid throughout Christian history, but possibly herself had a different name before she took on that role. Many of the sisters, when they make monastic vows, they actually take on a different name. They lose the name their mother and father had given them, and they take on the name of somebody like Mary or somebody like Teresa. And so we don't know for sure if Brigid is her name, but what we do know is there is so many beautiful stories attributed to Saint Brigid. So many legends and what she was about. Even the legend that she was the nursemaid to the Christ child, which, she was born in the middle of the 5th century CE and lived into early 525 of the 6th century. So how could this woman from Ireland be the nursemaid, Ireland in the 5th century, be the nursemaid to Jesus the Christ in the 1st century in Palestine. Like, how could that even be the case? But in the Celtic imagination, like, time isn't as linear as we Westerners might think. And so there's legends about her being like this nursemaid to the Christ child, this like wet nurse to the Christ child. And the Feast of St. Brigid actually is placed on February 1st in Christian history, which had been this Celtic celebration all in the land of Ireland and those Hebridean islands, the place where the bride is honored, of Imbolc. And Imbolc itself is like this midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. It's like almost exactly between those two celestial events. And there's this understanding that between like February and April, it's the lambing season in this beautiful country, in these islands that are filled with these beautiful lambs, the sheep, the ewes, all of these amazing animals that you'll just see grazing all over. They have to be born at some point, and Imbolc is like the time where that season is beginning, where this part is spring and new life is coming forth. And all of this is part of the lore of St. Brigid. There is a way that this woman and those that were with her in this abbey, that they were seeking to help us understand there is this eternal flame, this flame of God that is within all of us. And in that act of keeping the fire like alive before their eyes, keeping that fire burning perpetually, it's a reminder of the perpetual fire in all of us as well. And it's also sort of interesting to me that this year in the Christian lectionary cycle, like this Feast of St. Brigid falls at the time the gospel readings have been about Jesus' Beatitudes, Jesus teaching the great teaching from the Mount as told in the Gospel of Matthew. And if you're catching this podcast like right on top of our service, our worship service on February 8th, then you already know that we have just spent time with the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 13 through 20, where Jesus is like huddling up his followers that he has just called, according to the Gospel of Matthew's telling of this story. Jesus had been doing like these amazing miracles, these like healing and like providing for the needs of all of the swarms of people that are being brought to him. And he sees all the crowd and he climbs up this mountain and he gathers his disciples that he has asked to come follow him, and he like sits down in the grass with them and he begins teaching them. I almost imagine Jesus like being in that circle up there on the mount and like literally looking directly into every one of their eyes, whether there were 12 exactly there or whether they were the beginning of the 72, however many exactly were around him. Probably not the whole crowd at this point. But he is looking at them and he is telling them, you are the salt of the earth. In terms of like, you are the ones that are here to preserve life. And then he's looking at them and he is saying, you are the light of the world. Like, you are light. You need to shine. Jesus is teaching. He's passing on this wisdom transmission that many of us like have all sorts of other names put upon us. Whoever tells us, you're salt, you are here to preserve life in this world. You are light. It is your responsibility to shine. Not just because we're like the chosen ones. It's just that Jesus is seeing this in those he's calling to be his disciples, because they are going to be the ones to go and teach this. He cannot on his own tend to the multitudes. He needs others who understand who they are. As the season of Lent begins, which is happening soon, February 18th, there's this sense of the gospel turning backwards, because we're going to go back to what's classically called the temptation of the Christ. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is out wrestling in the desert, in the wilderness. Like, we have these stories that come about what exactly happened. It's not atypical for us to take time in the wilderness, to take time set apart in the desert, and even in indigenous cultures, to send people into a place of wilderness as a part of their initiation process, their initiatory process into who it is they're here to be in the tribe. And so I can imagine Jesus being out in that wilderness. He's literally being tested, being prepped, if you will, not necessarily by some like physical devil that's coming to him. I don't see that and read the text that way. But like, he's wrestling with those inner demons, because those inner like ego kind of fixations that can jump up can pull us off from our path of being light bearers in this world. So if Jesus is going to be about what he's supposed to be here, about his purpose, why he's in this world, and how he's here to like spread this movement, this like teaching of God, so that others will join this like circle that will keep on expanding until like all the world understands that we are light, we are salt, we are here for essential for life in this world, so that the light keeps on expanding, so that life continues to be preserved and even like enjoyable, like that we can taste the delightful flavors of being alive as people in this world. There's a movement that has to happen. And I think it's so awesome that St. Brigid's feast aligns with this season in the gospel and the readings that we are doing from the lectionary that align us with the Gospel of Matthew's teaching about what Jesus is about at the start of his ministry. Sometimes Celtic Christianity is like criticized for not having either a clear understanding of the need for Jesus or like ignoring grace altogether. And that beautiful like Celtic wisdom teacher, John Philip Newell, this Celtic Christian translator, if you will, because he helps us understand what this Celtic flair of Christianity is all about. He clearly says that is not at all the case. It's just that in the Celtic Christian mind, there's a whole different way of looking at Jesus and what he was about and why he was here. And there is this understanding of Jesus being this teacher who came not as a guru in the sense of sometimes we think of gurus, but I guess you could think of him as a guru, but this like master teacher who has this wisdom to pass on that others will like understand, like will catch this vision as well. And so Jesus is essential in Celtic Christianity, at least according to John Philip Newell, because he is here to wake us up. Really, he is here, John Philip Newell beautifully says, he is the recapitulation of who we are. Like, he is here resounding the truth of who we really are, resounding the truth of who we really are, because we forget that we are light. We forget that we are light bearers for this world. We forget that we are salt that is here. Like, why are we here? We're here to preserve life in this world. We forget that because of all the other messages that get taught to us. And if we were raised in a very strict Western Orthodox kind of understanding of Christianity, even the religious traditions that were passed on to us might have us thinking we are something other than light. There's a beautiful saint. I believe it is Saint Teresa of Avila, perhaps, maybe not. I can't remember for sure. But there's a beautiful saint who I've quoted before, and she says we should not sin because sin does not allow others to see the light of God in us. That's a whole different way to think about sin and why we shouldn't do those things that like separate us from God and others, because it actually like mars others' ability to see the light of God in us, like this burning eternal flame that we are, that is in us. Others can't see that. For Jesus' teachings about us being the light of the world, and like having that coincide with this season around St. Brigid, that also was this ancient Celtic season of Imbolc that is celebrating the renewal of the earth, and like the season of lambing beginning, like the season of the lambs like beginning to be born, this new life that's taking place, for all of this to like be coinciding. Seems like a really important time for us to pause and get in touch for a little bit with the eternal flame that is in us, so that we might be able to be honoring of Christ's command, of Christ's really just the fact that he's telling us, like, you are the light of the world. Like, you are the light of the world. You may not see that, but you are the light of the world. So let's get ourselves quiet for a little bit to see if we can get in touch with that beautiful burning flame that is in most all the images of St. Brigid, have the fire that she was all about tending with the spiritual practices, and physically with the flame in Kildare, as a representation of how to tend the fire that is within. So if you will make sure your feet are flat on the ground, the floor, you might have them, or maybe you literally have them in the grass somewhere right now. But even if you're on like a concrete floor, even underneath that is the living earth. And so let the tendrils of the soles of your feet open and connect you back down. Hopefully you're beginning to feel them like open up, activate. You might be like really noticing as you focus your energy and as you breathe, paying attention to the tendrils, the soles of your feet, connecting you down deep into this beautiful world. And as we take a few deep breaths from the belly, and bulk meaning in the belly, because in the belly is where all life begins, is one of the ways to understand Imbolc. So if we breathe from the belly and release it slowly, take another deep breath from the belly and release it slowly. We're not going to do fire breathing today, although fire breathing is one way to really get the eternal flame like revved up and ready to go for the day. But that's not what we're going to do today. We're going to turn inward through the space of our heart. So focusing our attention, our energy, our prayer on opening the space of our heart in the middle of our chest. And asking the divine that is within, the fire, Hildegard calls it the viriditas, this like greening fire of God that is within all living things, asking that part of ourselves to begin to awaken, so that we might actually get in touch with this perpetual flame in us that might need to be fanned a little bit right now. So if you're finding yourselves pulled off from that, you take another deep breath, you set the intention that you are seeking to connect with the fire of God that is within you, the fire of the Holy Spirit that is within you. We're doing this through entering the space of our heart, and maybe you're even feeling yourself dropping down further into your belly, into the core of who you are, that is connected with the earth, that is connected with the heavens, the transcendent God, and that is the gift of you being here. If you don't like sense this, if you don't like physically feel this within, you can take a few more deep breaths. You can like increase the pace of your breathing from the belly. That will help to like raise up this flame in you. Or you can literally like place your palms of your hands on the center of your chest and on your belly to keep your prayer, your intention, your attention there in this aspect of yourself, because within you is the fire of God. And if you want to add a verbal prayer to that, or what we might call a mantra, as we're in this time of quiet, we might begin to say inwardly, or really we should say it out loud and really hear it, because in that way we resound the truth of who we are. As we say, I'll say it aloud, you can as well. I am the light for the world. Like, I am light for the world. Maybe you just want to say, I am light. Or maybe you want to say, the fire of God lives in me. Oof, maybe you're feeling your cells like activating all throughout your body. You might actually be feeling, I'm like starting to feel really warm, like the fire of God lives in me. The fire of God lives in me, or your mantra that you may be using, maybe I am light for the world. Maybe you're just saying light bearer, like I am light bearer. I am light. Let's take one more deep breath. Saying aloud your mantra, whichever one you've chosen. I'm going to say the fire of God lives in me. As I release that deep breath. And inwardly express gratitude. That give thanks inwardly that the fire of God lives in you. That there is this perpetual flame within, that you are the light for the world. Like, you are light. This is amazing. This is amazing, amazing. When you're ready, if you'll bring your palms together near the center of your chest, prayer pose. And we honor the perpetual flame, the fire that is God in all living things, by honoring the fire of God in all living things. So before we leave this time of centering, this pausing for peace, I invite you to literally bow with the intention that you are honoring that the fire of God lives in all things. All are light. Every person we meet has the light of God living in them. Perhaps it needs to be woken up a little bit, or perhaps sometimes it feels like it's shining too brightly for your liking, but all people have the fire of God within. I wonder, as you go forth into this week, if you can find a way to keep before you that the fire of God lives in you, and to keep before you that you are light, but everybody else around you is also light for the world as well. Perhaps we can be somebody who can resound that truth to another, especially if they're struggling with other voices inwardly or outwardly that are telling them something different, but to remind them, like, wait a minute, you are light for the world. Like, shine. This is what Jesus says, shine. Shine brightly, my friends, wherever you are, all throughout this week. Blessings. Celebration of Imbolc can continue, this beautiful gift of taking St. Brigid with you so that you remember that the light of God is in you. Love ya. Have a great week. Be safe.